All right. Thank you for being here today. I'm here with Ambika Devi, and you have a lot of things you're involved in: writer, astrologer, meditation, Jedi, as you would say, student and teacher, um, poet, life coach, and podcaster. What have you been working on the most lately?
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you in person, TR. I had this experience a few days ago where I have been a student of Vedanta for many, many decades. Vedanta is one of the paths of yoga. And I've been studying yoga since 1969 when I was a little itty bitty kid. And I read and listen to podcasts and books. I love audiobooks. And I have one particular copy of the Bhagavad Gita that I really, really enjoy. The Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters divided into three sections of six chapters, which is from an epic called the Mahabharata. It's comparable to something like the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm talking a big book. It took me 3.5 years to read it, and I read it every night.
Hmm.
But it's in Sanskrit. So I was reading a translation into English, but that book is amazing, full of these great stories. And I continue to study at Shivananda Ashram. Right now, I've been in a course for about a year and a half, having just completed another Bhagavad Gita course that I took that took 2.5 years. So this is not an easy study, even six chapters of things that are written in little poetry type form. And what is this about? It's about how to be. Who am I? What am I doing here? And each time I revisit the Bhagavad Gita, I learn even more. Well, a few days ago, I was listening to it from the beginning, this one particular audiobook version I love. And I just got inspired. And I have an upcoming haiku workshop that I'm offering, teaching people how to transform their short poetry, which is haiku, 17 syllables, into haibun, which is an essay. I didn't even know I was doing this until my editor, who runs writing groups that I'm a part of, told me, oh, an essay from haiku is haibun. I mean, I don't know everything. I'm a student of life like we all are. So I got jazzed up doing that, and I have a few of them I'm working on. One is the essay is in editing form, and if I get it completed in time, I'll enter it into a contest that closes on the 14th of January this month. But the other day, I was just so inspired listening to the introduction into this particular author's version of giving us the juicy juice from the Bhagavad Gita. And I started writing a bunch of haiku, probably because I'm doing this upcoming workshop. And the next thing I knew, I had written 12 different haiku inspired by ideas about what is this about? What is this? What is it about these 18 chapters that fascinate people and have even begun spiritual paths of different organized religions? Now, just so everybody listening and watching understands, I am not a part of a religion. I'm a yogi. I'm a Vedanta, meaning I study the Vedanta. And Vedanta is science. It comes from the Vedas, the Rig Veda, to be exact, is where that inspiration came from. And I've been working on a PhD for a decade. Now, it's not your conventional PhD where you're in school or you're teaching school. Because my master's is in yoga, and I continued on studying with my professor, who was my advisor and my philosophy teacher. And he started another university and moved back to India. So I gave a PhD challenge of very simple. A challenge doesn't have to be paragraphs or pages. Mine was simply, I want to teach people to meditate so that they know that they are. And when I first did it, I was thinking so that they know that they are in the state of meditation. But now I'm starting to realize from studying this course, which is entitled Who Am I? That it's so that they know that they are. And I am just like, mind blown over this. So there's a bunch of haiku I've written, and I probably will write a haibun, which will be the introduction to it. I'm a poet. I have a book of poetry. My third book, The Wizard and the Wrench, is poetry of mine and poetry of a dear friend of mine who's a bit older than me. He was a Nam vet, and he's written a lot of very famous books of poetry about Vietnam. He was put into Vietnam when he was only 16 years old. His name is Dominic Albanese. And those of you who have been in service in any armed force, I am very, very compassionate and very grateful. However, I am a pacifist, so I wanted Dominic to have a book of poetry about love. And he did have another love poetry book come out right before ours, one of his own. But when I first met him, what really charmed me and sparked me of what he loved was the river. You and I both live in Florida, TR. And he's a mechanic. He was a Ferrari mechanic. And he worked in a reel shop that's really close to me, fixing reels, and before that, Ferrari. And he has an amazing story. He's got books out that you can learn about him that he's published on his own. And I just wanted to write something about love and spirituality with him in the form of poetry. And at the time, I was teaching in an online school of wizardry. And when I took that job on, I posed it to my PhD professor and said, hey, I'm taking this job online. It was back in 2016. I just had this really strong intuitive feeling that I needed to figure out how to work online. And it was back in 2016, even before, 2020 when it all went down. I just wanted to start figuring it out. So I took this job. And at first, I just wanted to rewrite their astrology program. I felt that their astrology courses could be more clear at that entry level. And I thought, well, maybe I'll continue on. But that was my only intention. And I said to my professor, I'm taking this job. Now, my professor's an astrologer also. And he was like, no, wizardry bad, scary, scary. I'm like, no. Look at it this way. Wizards are yogis. You're thinking witch. There's a difference. There's male and female wizards. There's male and female witches. But wizards, they're the keepers of love and peace in society. They're the watchers and the observers. And we yogis, that's what we do. That's what the state of meditation is. It is finding the witness state. And that's exactly what Vedanta is about. Understanding that I am not this body. I am not the mind. And I did say just now, the mind, not my mind, the mind, because it's unified and we've got a pipeline that brings in information. And slowly, I was able to convince him. And what happened over the course of the 5 years that I was there, a part of this little online school, is that I first went just to be a writer, just to write an astrology entry-level program. And then they said, well, we really like how you're interacting with people, because I did partake in some of the social events that were offered on this online platform. And I said, oh, well, thank you. They said, would you like to take on an entry-level course in the psychic arts department? Because they wanted to give me the healing department. And I said, no way, man. I taught holistic health at the university level for 21 years. I do not want to go back there, because I've learned so much about people and health that it's really in the mind, even though I've been a yogi since 1969. And they said, okay, well, we'll give you this course. Well, I started looking at that, and what happened? I'm a writer. I rewrote it. And I started overseeing it. And then 6 months later, I became the dean of the psychic arts department. And that's when I was able to say to my professor, Shastri, that's how you say high esteemed professor in Sanskrit. I said, Shastri ji, I am going to write a program in the psychic arts department, but between you and me, it's going to be about meditation. And so he said, okay. And so I have that whole body of work that I will turn into a book at some point. But with what just poured out of me a few days ago, I feel like I want to write that. I want to finish that first. I want to give that to my professor and say, how does this jazz you about understanding Vedanta and meditation and all of these things that could be encompassed in that PhD challenge of mine? Because I've been waiting to get invited and supported with funding to go around the world and talk about this stuff. That's why I call myself a mind tamer. That and a meditation Jedi. You know, a Jedi is a practicer. I think I also think of Jedi as kind of like it feels martial arts to me. And I used to own a martial arts school back in the early '80s. But
What
we were into meditation.
what type of martial arts?
Xuanfa, Kung Fu.
Oh, okay.
But we also taught some hand to hand karate and Wing Chun, which is hand trapping.
Yeah.
But I've been practicing yoga. I mean, I was on my mat before we sat down to have this conversation today.
How does yoga, meditation, and astrology overlap?
Oh, that's a great question. Have you heard the term body, mind, spirit?
Yes.
Okay. So yoga is actually for meditation. People think it's a stretchy pants exercise program. That's just, if yoga is a tree, then the asana are one of the branches. Asana are the postures.
Okay.
And so those are important to get the joints loosened up. People think of it in terms of stretching muscles and tendons, but the truth of the matter, and I notice this, I'm 64 years old. And when I get on my mat, the first sun salutation I do, there's a lot of popping. You know, ankles, knees, wrists, who knows? And as I move along, I feel those joints loosening up. And in turn, yeah, the muscles and the tendons stretch. Not everybody can put their foot behind their head, but we hope that everybody survives through this physical lifetime without having to get a hip replacement. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yoga is really to get you loosened up so you can sit still, because the directives of meditation are quite simple. Sit up straight. So lift your spine up to create some space in the vertebra. Close your eyes. We can all do that. We do that at night when we're sleeping. And focus on the breath. That's where things become a little tricky. Pranayama is the way that we can quieten the mind, where we can witness it instead of being involved and looping with it. So that's what yoga's for. Yoga is for the mind. Ayurveda, which is another branch of that study, is for the physical realm. You might have heard of Feng Shui. Have you heard of this?
I have.
In this path, it's called Vastu, which is an offshoot and a relator to Ayurveda. My second book, Unfolding Happiness, is about Ayurveda. I've actually got a copy sitting here, right here. And I wrote it with a former MD who turned Ayurvedic doctor. Now, I taught holistic health at the university level for 21 years. So I have a lot to say about holistic health, but I also am always open to learning more about it. And I actually went to him as a client. And then when my first book came out, he asked me, will you help me write a book? So I penned this one and interviewed him to get his part of it. So that Ayurveda is for the body. So we've got body and mind. Well, what's for spirit then in body, mind, spirit? astrology. Astrology is the spirit aspect of the term body, mind, spirit, but it hasn't come into the awareness or consciousness or acceptance yet the way that yoga has, because yoga has found its way into gyms. And yoga is being used in prisons, as is guided meditation, which has just exploded and become so popular because people are finding it a way to get to sleep. Even if you lie down and listen to a guided meditation, and hopefully everybody, you're closing your eyes to do it. And if you find yourself falling asleep doing it, it's okay. That's what my podcast is about. I just give you free guided meditations along with articles that I write. I don't interview people. And the spirit part, what happened there? Why are we keeping that like a secret weapon? Why are we preventing people from understanding it? Because we wonder, what am I doing here? Clients that come to me for coaching, they're asking, what am I supposed to do? You know, maybe they've had a path of study if they're younger, teens or college students, or maybe they've been in a career path for a really long time and they wake up one day in a midlife crisis and they're not happy. And maybe they've just run into a period of time where there's so much frustration and loss happening, because that happens in life. And astrology helps to unravel it. It's not set in stone fate. If you go to any divinator and they act like this is the only way, then I encourage you to get up and walk out or question them. Because my question to them is, what about free will? How does that play into all of this? So astrology gives us this roadmap, and it is the stars and planets. And planets look like stars from our vantage point. You know, they're light. So it's the science of light. So that is body, mind, spirit. And that's why, if you're a yogi, it behooves you to learn something about astrology and Ayurveda. If you're an astrologer, it behooves you to get on a mat and learn how to stretch your body and tune in and meditate. Because if you are an astrologer, you must be a contemplative person. You must be able to look at a chart and come up with ideas to help this person or yourself to understand, who am I, what am I doing here, and what's my purpose. And so that's what I do with clients.
How much of individual interpretation is there in astrology?
Individual interpretation of what?
If astrology is seeking information about humanity's world through celestial placement, how much of that depends on the individual's view of that?
Well, I mean, if somebody's coming to me for information, they're quizzical. But you don't have to believe in anything. It really is the interpreter. I mean, think about it this way. If you have a teacher teaching you a subject in high school, you might have a teacher that you're just not feeling the vibe with. You're not understanding them. Maybe they're really linear and you're more right-brained and you're just not absorbing the information. Like I love storytelling, obviously. And if you're giving me fact after fact after fact, it's not going to work for me. Case in point, when I was admitted into high school, I had to take a math test because I was in a very advanced level by the time I got done 8th grade. And I took a math test and I was put right into geometry. I skipped algebra in high school. Now, at the time, I had been a writer, but my teachers were more forgiving about my spelling. My math teacher that I was placed in with geometry marked me wrong on every word I spelled incorrectly. I was then failed. I got a D. I wasn't completely failed, but I got a D in geometry and was put into summer school, thank goodness, by my mother with the head of the math department. After the first session of asking me questions, he said, "Can you bring your mom into your next lesson with me?" I said, "Sure." And when we got there, he said, watch this. And he asked me questions about theorems and proving things. And I answered everything. I drew on the board. I knew everything he was asking me. So he went to the teacher and said, "What the heck were you thinking?" He asked me to bring the tests on that second meeting to show him what went wrong. And he could see that I was marked wrong for spelling. That geometry teacher's wife was the head of the English department. He had no business treating me that way. At the same point in ninth grade, I was told by my ninth grade English teacher I would never amount to anything because I couldn't spell. Ha! I have a spell checker. I have an editor. I have a publishing company. I have 6 books. I've won writing awards. You know, if I had let that beat me down, that would have really hurt. So when I'm working with someone as an astrologer, I'm looking for their high points and ways I can encourage them. I'm listening to them about their challenges. And I'm looking at a chart and perhaps where they're living. That could be hanging them up. Yes, location affects us. If you've ever moved or lived or even traveled in a different place, you might have run into this. I lived in Estonia for a month going to Mind Valley University. You may have heard it or heard of it and seen advertisements of them online. And I knew that it was a challenging area for me astrologically. I tried not to program myself to have issues. But the third night I was there, I broke my key off in the lock on my Airbnb. And I had a really difficult time getting a hold of the owner because she was going through stuff personally and she wasn't, her husband turned the phone off. And I couldn't get through to her, but thank goodness I had a friend that I had made already. And I was able to call her. She was at a hostel, and the good, easy person to talk to who spoke English was at the hostel. And I was able to find a locksmith, and I had enough cash, thank goodness, that I could pay the locksmith. Of course, my landlady reimbursed me, but I mean, I went through some crazy stuff there. And I thought, okay, hopefully this is all I'm handling here. There were a few other little things that happened. I almost missed my taxi ride on the way to leave to the airport. But, okay, that's an example. I've had clients where I've looked at astrolocality for them because they wanted to talk to me about moving. And my first view is always of the world map. And I remember this one client I had in a metaphysical store where I was the astrologer in Scottsdale, Arizona. I lived in Arizona for 10 years. And the first thing I looked at, because she was looking at where could I go? Where are good places on this planet? Because she knew of astrolocality. And I said, well, I want to definitely tell you about this one place I see that you would not do well in. And it was a triangle of area in Europe. And she said, oh my goodness, I traveled there and I got robbed on a train. She listed all these things that happen. It's little things like this that kind of blow my mind and show me that this stuff works. But I don't walk into an appointment saying, I know everything about you, and what's going to happen. No, I mean, you might want to do something like maybe you want to work in finance or do a startup. And I'm just not seeing that kind of stuff in your chart. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to look at what are the places and the timing that could happen. A cookbook. So we can't just look at it that way. And that goes back to what I said earlier. A good astrologer is an excellent astrologer is a meditator. They're contemplative. They can look at the baseline chart and then the current transits and then the upcoming eclipses and transits, the solar return, which is the birthday. All of these must be considered when somebody asks me what's coming up. Or what does this next year look like? I want to know even more. Are you talking about love? Are you talking about career? Are you talking about location, travel, projects? I like my clients to look at life in quarters like we do with business. 3-month plans. What do I want to manifest in the next 3 months? What do I want to learn in the next 3 months? And what do I want to give back to the world in the next 3 months? And that right there, everybody, is a 3-column exercise you can practice in your journal and stick it up on the fridge where you can see it.
What makes astrology work? Why does the celestial placement of things affect, or how can it be understood how that affects an individual here?
I think you should ask the divine source that question.
Okay.
I didn't
Why do you
develop
think it?
it.
Why do
You
you think
know,
it? Like, what do you think the peek behind the curtain is? How do you think it works?
math.
Okay.
There's a lot of math involved. The system is mathematical. There are different measurement systems. There are arguments about this system's better than that system. If you're not using the real timing of star movement as measured from the Earth via calculus, you're using the wrong system. I disagree. I use what's called the tropical system. That other system that's used in astronomy is sidereal. And that looks at, we're floating around on the earth around this thing called the sun with these other planets that have names and asteroids and things. And then there's this thing called the great attractor, and there's this other thing called the center, the galactic center, and that's sidereal timing. That's why all the astronomers want to give the astrologers a hard time. But hey, I've studied it. My astronomy teacher used to be a navigational expert for the Navy in the US. I learned it. I had to take calculus again for the third time because I took it in high school and then I took it again in college. Why? Because it was easy for me. That's why I took it in college, because the first time I went to college, because I needed an elective and I thought, calculus, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
knock out that easy calculus elective. It's a good
that's what
idea.
I did. Yeah. And so there's that. There's astronomy. If an astrologer can't look at a program and see a mistake, then they didn't study astronomy. When I first started using the program I use, which is called Solar Fire, they actually asked us when I was in school, because I went to school for astrology. I'm not self-taught. Was I self-taught for a while? Yes. Did I have mentors for a while? Yes. Was I an apprentice? Yes. And then I went to school and got a title in astrology. And then when I was studying for my master's in yoga, I came to find out that most of my teachers were astrologers. So I continued on. And I've studied at my ashram, at Shivananda Ashram. I've studied Jyotisha, which is called Vedic astrology in the West. And I did study in the sidereal system. I also studied with a very famous astrologer who uses the theories of Jyotish or Jyotisha and uses tropical zodiac, which is what I use, which is used in Greco-Roman. Tropical zodiac measures as per the movement of the earth with the equinoxes and the solstices. Those are real. Those happen, right? They create a time clock. We have something called the solstice, the winter solstice and the summer solstice, the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, and the autumnal, the autumn. So I use that measurement. Okay, why? I've been in plenty of interviews talking, and this was decades ago, about which is better and why. And you know what? My answer is it's the astrologer. If they can interpret it well, then you're going to a good astrologer. Doesn't matter which system. I don't care if you're reading tea leaves or tarot cards or throwing bones or tossing coins or the I Ching and you've got, pieces of bamboo. I don't care which system you're using or runes, as long as you can interpret it well and you're making sense for the person who's asking you questions or your own self.
So there's like multiple ways to interact with whatever it is that is controlling or designed everything.
Yes, in my opinion. And that is why also that at the wizardry school, I became the dean of divination also. So I was the dean of two departments, psychic arts and divination. And then I ended up writing their training program and became the dean of faculty for a while.
It's you have to get a lot of questions about Hogwarts when you talk about wizardry school. But
Thus my cup.
yeah, I noticed. What do you think, based on astrology and your yoga experience, meditation, what do you think this reality is?
Wow. So you're asking me if it's holographic
I I think it does depend on
or
what words you
or a
use. Like if you
sim
could,
or a simulation?
yeah, like some people get angry when you say simulation, but simulation is
Oh,
just a
I don't have a
word that
problem with
explains
that.
the idea. And I think
O-
that
Okay.
idea explains everything. But
First of
what do you
all,
think?
let's get clear about some personal delights. It's not a matter of Star Wars versus Star Trek. I love them both. Okay? When it comes to Hogwarts, yes, I love the Harry Potter books. I'm the first one to love that level of literature, of YA literature. I adore it. I hope and aspire to writing it. Actually, Unfolding Happiness this is rated 9 years old and up. I love writing to that aspect of we adults. Adults. You know what? I saw something posted, I think it was on Instagram the other day, that somebody, I can't remember the exact wording, so forgive me if you're one of the people following me and I'm not getting this right. But the gist of it is, elder people wake up one day and their inner child says, "What the heck is going on here?" Basically what that's about is, you're still an inner child. You're still a child or a teenager. I think it was a teenager, they said. An older person is a teenager who wakes up one day and thinks, WTF. What the Florida, I'm going to call that one. We get the rap, don't we,
Yeah.
TR? We get busted on all the time, but I've lived here for a while. I came here to help an elderly parent, and I ended up staying because the lockdown happened, and here I am,
Yeah. Florida's all right.
making the most of it. It is all right as long as the wind, is kind to us. But the wind happens everywhere, and so does the weather, and so does the earth rumbling. And those of us who have a roof over our head and food on our table and the ability to laugh and dance and sing and go out and look at the stars and the clouds, that's what we need to be grateful for.
Yeah. So,
I digressed. Oh,
yeah.
it was back to
What do you think all this
Hogwarts.
is? Yeah.
I'm going to answer it from the point of view of a yogi and also a little bit Crazy Horse.
Okay.
Do you know the story of Crazy Horse and how he got his name? The Native American chief?
Yeah. I think I've read that before, and I probably did one
It's
of the
not a pop
times
quiz.
going
It's
out to
okay.
the Crazy Horse Monument that they're still working on. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So he got his name because he dreamt of horses. Interestingly enough, I had a dream of a horse, a wild horse last night, where the horse, I was up steps, kind of like, I don't know if you have these in Jacksonville where you are, but
We don't have
in
steps in Jacksonville.
Stewart, not in houses,
Yeah.
but in Stewart,
Nowhere.
there's this area where there's a floating stage and there's wooden steps that go down to it that are part
Okay.
of it. And in my dream, I was standing up the steps, and there was a moment in the dream where I thought, "Is this Stewart? Like where am I?" And I saw a man, nondescript. So was it a shadow being? Was it a phantom? Because I am really into dreams and the whole Don Quixote thing, and also you know, what are these dream visions? Are these real? And we have been talking about them in this course, in the with the Drisha Viveka, which is the book I'm reading right now for this course. It's a little thin book. Um, you can write me messages on my website and ask me questions, everybody, if it's not already expressed in my blog. Ask me questions. Tell me, I want to know more about this, and I'll write something about it, or of course, I'll answer you. But what is it? I love the idea that it's a dream and we're acting it out, that we've already dreamt it before. And I love that explanation for deja vu, that sensation of, whoa, I've been here before. But I don't know about you, but I've had these sensations of, whoa, I've dreamt this before. And then I'll go to one of my dream journals, because yes, I do keep dream journals, and I'll find it. I'll find the dream where I had it. And I love that book by Ursula K. Le Guin, The Lathe of Heaven. Have you read that or seen the film? It's an older film. So, if you're into movies, it may be a little too old school for your attention, but I hope you'll watch it or read it. It's a short story. So those of you who like shorter stories would really, well, it's a book. It is a book. It's not,
nice. It's the bait and
5,000
switch. Bait and switch. It's a short
Yeah.
story. I'm kidding. It's 500 pages. Okay.
I don't know. I have it over there, but I'm connected by a wire to this, so I can't walk over and get it. Or I could if you wanted me to. But The Lathe of Heaven, it's a film, and I was crossing it in my head with A Boy and His Dog, which is a short story. But The Lathe of
The one
Heaven,
with the Miami Vice guy
which Miami
is a
Vice?
movie.
Okay.
The Boy and His Dog.
Now we're really digressing and offshooting.
Yeah.
But you got to watch that with me. When I start pulling you into my world, then you know you're here. But The Lathe of Heaven is about prophetic dreaming and then waking up, and the reality is like that. And my question to everybody is, what's the difference with every day? Have you ever had an experience where you wake up and you feel taller? I had that experience this morning. I'm short. I'm 5 feet tall. But yesterday I was putting a dish away in a cabinet and I felt short. Today I was putting a dish away in the same place and I didn't feel that height. I felt taller. I thought, whoa, so did reality shrink and expand? I had an experience a few years ago where I was out walking where I walk. I live in a gated community. Thank goodness. I'm grateful. And we have many neighborhoods in this neighborhood. Well, it's huge. And one of them is a golf course community. And so there's sidewalks and I can walk, and there's wildlands, and I love it. Where I live is in a littler side neighborhood, and it's a little wilder. That's why I chose this house. I like the wild animals. I like the hammock. What we call the woods the hammock here in South Florida, everybody. It's same word as the hammock you swing in and nap in, but I love the hammock behind me. There's alligators. A couple days ago, there were vultures flying and circling, and they were sitting in a pine tree behind me. I love that. So what's this reality then? I was out walking and I saw this thing that looked like a maple leaf. We don't have maple trees here. And I got closer to it and it looked like it was made out of burlap. You know how that's woven?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of looks like this, all woven together. And I said out loud, all right, who's in charge of the simulation? Because this leaf is in the wrong place and it looks like it's made out of burlap. And then I've had experiences walking on the same stretch of sidewalk where it feels like it's closer to the woods, and there are woods there. There are pine trees and taller trees. Or it feels like it's further away from the woods. Why? Why is my perception changing? So it goes to kind of like the holodeck, in Star Trek. And I feel like some days it feels like a holodeck. Do I see shadow beings? Sometimes. You could think I'm crazy. Or you could think, yeah, I've had that experience where I see something and it feels shadowy. Or this morning, I went into my kitchen and there's an object that is on the wall that's a little, like a little cabinet. And my mother had hung my father's pocket watch in behind the glass in it. And that thing has been on my wall for 17 years I've lived in this house. And I put that on the wall years ago. It doesn't have a latch. This morning it was wide open. And I said out loud, Mama? Because she's not in a body anymore. But, maybe she was here, wanted to get my attention about something. And I looked at the time on the watch and it said 10:30. And I thought, what do I need to know about 10:30? So I look at life this way. I don't know if you're questioning stuff. I live alone. I don't have kids. I don't have a pet. I have more time to contemplate and get into these kind of conversations with myself. I talk to the divine. You might use the G word, God, but I don't see a singular male or female being. As a matter of fact, my master's thesis is about the divine, masculine, and feminine in everything. So I put that into my first book, which is a novel. And it's a lot about me.
Okay. So then your view of reality currently, because I'm sure it can change, it's like a dream.
That's part of it. The other is that if we want to get into the idea of karma, that there's actually 3 types of karma. There's a storehouse. You could think of it like a silo. I grew up on a farm. So there's a storehouse of karma. You could put it in whatever object, building, edifice you want to imagine. Then there's agami. That storehouse is called sanchita karma. And then there's a instant karma, agami karma. I do something, something happens to me. And then there's prarabdha karma. That's like a little pouch that you get to. That's your pouch of magic beans that you can throw in the ground and grow a beanstalk and fight the giants with. So that is what the prarabdha karma is, what determines the body you land in, the womb that you get to rent for 9 months, with all of the opportunities that moment when you take your first breath, which is when we measure your astrological chart from, then determines all of your choices. I believe it's thought that creates reality. What is thought? Thought is part of the mind, right? Remember I said it was external before. There are parts to the mind. There's the ego mind. That's what runs most people through life. And that is what gets us in the sticky web of attachment with the pairs of opposites. I like it, I don't like it. That's good, that's bad. That's positive, that's negative. Well, we can measure electricity that way. But should we measure life that way? A true yogi backs up and doesn't see the pairs of opposites anymore. They see only the equanimity and the connection of everything. So I love the School of Wizardry's, their code, which is a quote by a famous Roman statesman, not even a philosopher. But I think this is one of the most potent things, and I'm sure that's what caught me. When I read that, I said, yes, I'm going to apply here. And it's everything is alive, everything is interconnected, everything is alive. Everything is alive. It's Cicero, and the way he said it is everything is interconnected. Everything is alive, everything is interconnected. And I think if we can look at that, then would there be war? If we could focus on love, would there be killing and stealing? If we could give the free energy that we know Tesla came up with, Would we need to have these bills that we're paying if we could create a society of giving to each other and being cooperative? But what are we doing here? I wonder. I get into the whole idea about aliens too, TR. I don't know if you've ever watched the channel on YouTube, The Y Files,
I
spelled
haven't.
WHY. Check it out,
Okay.
everybody. AJ, I love this guy. I love what he's doing. He's a great storyteller, and I'm a sucker for a great storyteller. I'm going to pay attention to you if you tell me a story. And that's the key, really, I think, to teach the inner child. And he talks about aliens and conspiracies and things like that, but not to the point where he's going to get thrown off, uh, you know, thrown out of the club. Because he will disprove stuff. He'll tell great stories, and then he'll show you how he either found stuff to disprove it or didn't find anything, and it led him to a dead end. And he does talk about interesting things like ESP and aliens. And his most recent episode from last week was about remote viewing, which is something I'm really into. When I was in school for astrology, we had someone come to speak to us about remote viewing and extrasensory perception. And we were in a theater with a big projection screen, which is what I think life is, by the way. It's a
The
theater with,
theater or the screen?
good question. I'll answer that later. But we were in this theater, and the presenter put slides up of images. And then after we looked at a few images and listened to the presenter speak, they then challenged us to tell them what the next image would be. Now, if it was a situation in a theater with a bunch of people in the seats where people raised their hands, other people could change their answers, right? That's not how this worked. We had to write it down on a piece of paper, pass it down to the end of the aisle, and then the slide was revealed. I nailed every single one. I've always been interested in this stuff. I took the course on my own, self-guided, from the Monroe Institute. I was reminded of the Monroe Institute by AJ of the Y Files because he did an episode on it. And so I was gifted a grouping of their first level, of their course, where you learn their techniques. And I would love to go there. They have an out of body experience course coming up in March, but I'm featured through a company that I work through, so I can't go in March. I'm featured that month. That's a side hustle that I do. I've worked on psychic apps since phones had curly cords. And my preference is to talk to people about relationships and astrology there. And I do attract a lot of people for that. Although I do get people who ask me, what's the other person thinking? Which is my opportunity to say, hey, maybe the issue here is communication. I was named an innovative communication expert CEO for 2023. You can find that on my LinkedIn and my website. So really, I think communication with self is the key. And that's what my newest book is about. It's about self-love and communicating with self. It's my pandemic project, everybody. It's called Cupid is a Bastard. And I was really authentic on it. The photographs of me on the covers are selfies. I mean, it's dreams. It's communication with Cupid. It's about love. It was initiated by an internet dating experience, which I have so much compassion for people who are trying to find love and are running into stuff with trying to meet people. I mean, the pandemic made it really hard on relationships. People got stuck together that weren't planning on living together. People met and had, long cerebral relationships where they never got to meet in person. And then when they finally did, went, and I just have a lot of compassion for relationships, but I feel that the same rules apply, whether it's family, friends, work, or that hope for romance. But guess what? In my book, Cupid is a Bastard, I bring it all back to self love and loving that inner child. And there's chocolate.
Where do
I have
where do you
recipes.
nice? Where do you most of your writing?
Where? You mean
Yep.
physically?
In this reality, what location?
I have a few locations. One is journals. I
Okay.
have stacks of them. I have several going at a time. I keep a dream journal and a philosophy journal going. I write in Evernote. I take dictation sometimes on Otter.ai. If I'm out and about, if I'm driving, for goodness sake, I would not be the one texting another person. I would be writing something. So I have to be careful. I have to pull over. I have to remember, stop writing. You're driving, you know? And I understand how people can get caught up texting when they're driving because you get into a thought, you want to convey something. But I write in a word processor. I wrote my second book on a cell phone that was like, remember the ones that had the buttons for the alphabet? The
Hmm.
cell phones? Some of you won't remember that.
That flipped open.
Yeah, remember the ones that went sideways? What were those called?
Uh,
Yeah, the flipped open and it was like a little key. I loved that thing. It was like a mini keyboard. I really loved that thing. I wouldn't mind going back there. It took me a long time to get my thumbs to work on the electronic kind we have on the full screen smartphones now. I like that tactile
Tactile.
feeling,
Yeah.
My current keyboard that I use on my computer has color lights like a gamer keyboard. What's my game of choice? Duolingo. I just started playing with. I like learning languages. And then I had this thought the other day, TR. What would this world be like if instead of, killing things and crushing candy, if we all played learning games instead?
What if this world, this reality was made to experience the life of a human, which is violence and emotion and all those things that if you were a supreme, all knowing, forever living being, you wouldn't be able to really experience them without understanding that this was just you playing a game. Where if you were a supreme being, maybe you would break your intellect apart into all these pieces and put them in different people to experience different perspectives to gain that experience.
That's what reincarnation is. You just explained it in a singular way. But have you ever read The Egg, the short story by Andy Weir? He wrote The Martian.
I think I have, and that was about probably in the time frame where I was reading books like The Secret as well.
Yep, it would go along that path. I read it every New Year's Day online.
Okay.
So you can go hear me read it and talk about it a little on my YouTube channel, which is my name, Ambika Devi. Some of my name's actually pretty common in the East, so some of my tags have the number 1008 after it.
Okay.
There are 1008 names of the goddess. My name, Ambika Devi, is one of the names of the goddess. It was given to me. I didn't pick it out. It was given to me by a swami in a ceremony at the ashram. I think you're hitting on something really, really right on with where we've come in this conversation with what is this place? What is this thing we call reality? It is an opportunity in a physical body, which to me is like a coat. It's a cloak. It's clothing, if you will, that we wear, but the true self is eternal. And if it's a video game, And there's a start to finish with many lifetimes on this wheel of what we call samskara. That you're born, you go through a lifetime, you die, there's a movie, I think Pixar made it, called Soul, where there's explanations of the life of a soul,
I
and
haven't seen that.
they're like little orbs, and there's like helpers, and you may or may not get into it. I had to take it in tiny bites,
Okay.
to be able to handle it. Unlike, Harry Potter that I can watch over and over and over again. My favorite is the third, in case you're wondering. I really love Sirius Black, and I've always loved the Sirius star. And when I was a little kid, if people would ask me where are you from in the universe, I would say Sirius. So when there was a character named Sirius, spelled the same as Sirius Black, and the
Hmm.
star, I mean, the Sirius Black, the character, the same as the star, of course. When I went to Universal Studios, that was the magic wand I got that would open up all the stuff at Universal. Had to be his wand.
Is
So,
Sirius the North Star?
no, it's the dog star.
Which star is the North Star? Is that just called the North Star?
Polaris.
Polaris.
Are you quizzing
Okay.
me?
No, well,
Thank
just
goodness I
Sirius
knew
was a
the.
bright star, right?
I just want Philip Galastro. His nickname's Galastro. I want you to know I just named the stars correctly. My astronomy teacher. I do go
Good.
out at night and I test myself. Which planet is that? Which star is that? And I use the Google star map. You know, I like to stay up on this stuff. I believe that when we stop learning, we stop living. And so, one of the major opportunities of a lifetime is learning. So, we're here to learn about each other. We're here to learn about personality, which is part of that prarabdha karma. We're here to learn about gender, which our society has become obsessed with. We're here to
Hmm.
understand that we really are at a chemical level not that much different, 0.009 from each other if we're measuring chromosomes. We're here to learn about water, which science still has a lot to learn about. We're here to learn about molecular information. We're here to learn about molecules and electrons and quarks, and even smaller, which is what CERN is obsessed with. We're here to learn about particles and the fact that particles, we have deduced with modern science, particles travel in pairs and they affect each other in a spooky way, which is spooky particle theory from Einstein. That if we affect one particle, the particle is affected. And AJ
Hmm.
has some really cool videos about this that will unravel it. And obviously, I'm a science nerd. Hopefully, obviously. And I see and question this often when people come to me to ask about relationships or for coaching in the relationship they're already in. Because, yes, I will coach couples and I am a minister. I can sign that document that says you two are married legally. And I take that really seriously because so many people enter into marriage thinking now the love will grow. BS. Wake up, people. Marriage is a contract, it's an incorporation of property. Look at it this way: when people get divorced, do they say, "Give me my love back"? No.
Hmm.
They want their money, they want their investment, they want half of the house. They want to make sure the children are cared for. So if a couple comes to me and says, "Will you plan our wedding date?" I say, "Sure. Show me your business contract." If they say, "Will you marry us? Will you conduct a ceremony?" I love doing ceremonies. I'll do a ceremony I've even helped babies be born. I worked as a doula with clients, uh, helping their babies be born in the delivery room, waking up the father who passed out on the floor and bringing their gooey baby to them and getting them to rub the birth cheese into them, I call it. I'm going to be very polite here. And
Nice.
and I will do a rite of passage ceremony for a female who is menstruating for the first time, or a baby's first haircut, or baby's first meal, which is called first rice in some cultures. I love that. Or a funeral. I've conducted lots of funerals, or marriage. That's one of these ceremonies. There are particular ones in different cultures. Retirement is one we know about in the West, or getting your first job. But when it comes to the idea of something like marriage, people, make a prenuptial agreement that both of you agree on. Do not do it until you have a business plan, because you should have learned about this if you had a roommate. But if you didn't have good roommate experiences and one person was always responsible for the business end of things, you're not ready to get married. And I think everybody should live by themselves for at least one whole year. Because
Just
then you'll
by
learn
themselves with no one else around and no
no
interaction.
pet, no pet. Because then you'll learn what it's like to be with you. And hopefully you'll develop some habits that another person, if you do choose to live with another person, will be able to work with. Like laundry and cleaning and paying the bills and taking care of your car. Unless you live in a place where public transit is the preferred modality of transportation. But when somebody is showing me signs of not being fully ready, willing, and able, and I'm going to use the word mature and ready to be in a situation, my first prescription is go live by yourself. People get attached, and that's what that world of duality that we're stuck in here is all about. We're here to learn to back up from it and realize I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am the witness of this body and this mind. And this is the hard path of yoga. It's called Raja Yoga, imperial yoga. Because it's not bhakti, which is devotion, chanting, prayer. That's beautiful. We should bring all of it into our lives. But Raja Yoga is study. And not everybody can accept I'm not this body. We use the term I am. Who are you? I'm Ambika Devi. Well, but that's the little I. That's the ego. The big I is watching. Here's an experiment. Want to do an experiment with me?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, close your eyes. Imagine the cup you just picked up. Can you see it? What color is it?
It's blue.
But your eyes are closed. Now you knew it was the cup, but who knew that it was the cup? And who knew that, what's going on, or what the eyes, the physical eyes, are seeing? Those are a tool, right? You can open your eyes, TR.
Okay.
Imagine you're a wave. You live in Jacksonville, you go to the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a wave, a little white cap, a calm day with a little wind. So there's a little bit of waves happening at the ocean. Now imagine you're the wave. Okay? But what are you part of? What's the wave a part of?
The ocean.
Right. But what's the ocean made out of?
Water.
And what's the chemical
other
compound of water?
Hydrogen and oxygen.
Correct, H2O. Therefore, does the wave think it's a wave? Yeah, of course it does. But if it has an ego, it thinks, I'm so cool, I'm pretty, I have this white foamy stuff, and then it recedes back into the ocean, right? Or even if it's out in the middle of the ocean. And then it might realize I'm water. One of my favorite stories of Vedanta, because Vedanta is explained in explanations of stories and examples. Upanishads are written. These are explanations. These are philosophical treatises about this philosophy. It takes sometimes many lifetimes to understand it. And I have been in classes with beginners. And I'm not a beginner. I've been studying this for a long time, but still I ask questions. I raise my hand. But our teacher reminded us of a story the other day about a doll made of salt, a little doll made of salt. And the doll lived near the ocean. It could see the ocean. And the doll asked itself, wow, I wonder what it feels like to be the ocean. And then the doll found out that the ocean has salt in it. And one day the doll jumped into the ocean. And then what happened?
Dissolved.
Right. That's what Vedanta teaches us, to dissolve into the true beingness, which is the witness. Now, how do we get in touch with that? It's called samadhi. That is a state of meditation, deep meditation. But there are stages we have to go through to reach that deep state of meditation. If I say, go to samadhi, you can't do that. But remember my master's thesis. I want to teach people to meditate so that they know that they are. Wow. Oh, somebody did just ring my doorbell. Can we pause for a second?
Sure.
Sorry about that. I had a psychic feeling. Mm-hmm. Just kept ringing the bell. I know that guy. All right.
Well, an issue with the sprinkler when we were talking about water seems appropriate.
Isn't that wild? You can leave that part in if you want. Just not when I walked away. So where were we? Okay, so the doll melts into the ocean and is no longer. Well, okay, this is where the attachment of life versus death gets in the way. None of us like pain. I don't like it when I bump a body part or pinch a body part by accident in a drawer, a cabinet, I don't like when I cut myself in the kitchen, and I still do. I don't like when I touch the hot stove or something in the oven when I'm not paying good attention. And we would hope that the first time we touch the hot stove that we learned that lesson, right? Mm-hmm. That's a karmic lesson. That's one of these little seeds, hot stove, ouch, don't do it again, right? Yes, one of those little seeds. Some of those are little, and we do get it. There are things in life where I don't know if you've ever said it, I've heard other people say it, I am never going to do that again. Can we step in it? Yep, in relationships all the time. Choices, but maybe food. Did you ever get put off a type of food that you liked at one time?
Yeah. They say the taste buds change every 7 years.
Well, body parts, your tongue changes every 3 days.
Oh.
Your heart every 6 months.
50% of all statistics are made up.
I think pretty much everything's imaginary, and that goes back to what's this reality? Oh my goodness.
Where do you think that ideas come from?
The mind.
And the mind is the big one mind.
It's unified.
Everything.
We all have pipelines. The brain is a computer database that gathers stuff. But habits, where do habits come from? I was a camp counselor when I was in high school. And my first bunk, it was sleepaway or sleepover camp or overnight camp. People have different terms for it. And my first bunk was 14-year-olds, the oldest kids. That was the top age. My youngest bunk was, I forget how old they were. They had to be first grade. They were first graders. So it's young.
Six
yeah.
or seven. Yeah.
And I was not a babysitter when I was little. My rule was I'll babysit your kid, but I'm not touching diapers. I just wasn't, I was not that female that wanted to procreate. But I've been a teacher all my life. I love teaching. So that was my first experience with being responsible for, a room full of little kids in a bunk without parents. And I'll tell you, that first day I met them, I could nail it. That one's going to be an executive. That one's going to be a housewife. That one's going to be an artist. That one's an athlete. They were little teeny kids, 6 and 7 years, maybe 7 years old, 7 and 8 maybe. So then they were post first grade, not going into first grade. They were first, second grade, that age. And I'm sure I was right. When I taught junior high, I had a few years of teaching secondary education before I got into university level. And I taught at a boarding school that had a 7th and 8th grade that were day school and small. The boarders were 9th grade through 12th grade. It happened to be where I graduated from as a 12th grader. And that first day I had five or seven, I can't remember. I'd have to look back through my records, 7th and 8th graders. And one was a violinist, and she was amazing. She happens to own the red violin. You might have heard of that movie. She's from a very, very wealthy family. When that kid would play the violin, I would cry. It was spontaneous. I couldn't control it. She had such depth as a 7th grader, as a violinist, and she's world famous right now. Absolutely world famous. I had them make a project. I was their art teacher. The first time I went to university, I went to art school, to a University of the Arts, which is now called Philadelphia College of Art. Well, it's always been. I'm sorry, it's called the University of the Arts. It was Philadelphia College of Art back then. They had broken apart from the Performing Arts College and went back with them. Frustrating, because I really wanted to minor at the Performing Arts College. But I gave them a 5x7 piece of paper and all kinds of stuff they could use. They could bring found objects, photographs, and I had them make an identification card, 5x7. I still have those. I kept them. I'm pretty sure it was 5 of them. Once you know it, what they said they were going to be, because I had them put, their profession on there. The one that said I'm a DJ, he became a world famous DJ. The one that said I'm a professional violinist, I already told you about. I mean, it's mind blowing that, and those, how many 7th and 8th graders do you know that can tell you exactly what they're going to do? Some will nail it, some will not. It depends on how we pose the question to them and what tools we give them to express themselves. Because it might not come out in verbiage. It may not come out in a clear sentence or paragraph, but it might come out in their creativity some other way. I think it's in there. It's the Prarabdha karma that determines this. So here we are. We have this Sanchita, the silo of possibilities. We have Agami, which happens in what we call reality. And we come in with this magic sack of beans, to determine what we're going to do in this lifetime. And do we pick every seed out and plant it? No. Some go back in the storehouse after this lifetime because people miss opportunities all the time. And why? Because we have thought, which is fueled by the ego part of the mind. And then we have to make a choice. That's part of free will. And then each choice requires that we take an action. That's a way to look at karma. Karma can be translated directly, literally, to the word action. And then that process creates another seed that goes in the silo. And we go through lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. You might hear some people talk about, oh, that's an old soul. Oh, that's a young soul. BS. Everybody's been here thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Over and over. We have heard the word awoke. Let's not go there. Or awakened. But are we really awake? No. I mean, we're in the process of trying to wake up. And what are we waking up to? The fact that I am not this body, I am not this mind. That death itself doesn't hurt. Yeah, I mean, you could suffer with a disease or an accident. Of course, that's suffering. But when you actually leave your body, it doesn't hurt. We could suffer because somebody says something to us. Have you ever had the experience where somebody said something to you and you couldn't sleep at night?
Hmm.
And all you did was hear it over and over and over again, and your reaction and reaction and re-reaction and re-reaction. That's thought looping. But anything can trigger a thought loop. Actually, the loop is made up of many different reaction potentials, like spokes of a wheel. And when something happens or somebody says something, we could get on that wheel and we can't get off. And then we're losing sleep. What do you think the cause of lack of sleep is? Thought or pain, right? But we know because yogis and meditation experts have actually created studies with science. And now people that work, hopefully, in emergency rooms are trained in helping to redirect the attention. You might have heard this. Energy follows attention. You might have heard that phrase. So if we are focusing on the pain, whether it's a physical trigger, an emotional trigger, an intellectual trigger, because I have intellectual triggers and not all are bad, but I might lose sleep over them. When I was writing Lilith, my first book, it would wake me up at night. I've had poems wake me up at night. When I was a musician, I had songs wake me up at night and I had to write it down. And when I was working on Lilith, I would be there in bed going, oh my gosh, thinking about it. And I had to give in and I would get up and it could be 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'd come over to my computer and I'd write till 10 a.m.
That's the difference between a writer and not a writer.
I
You got
I
to
think
write.
well, I get it. My editor, Rusty LaHaye, she conducts all kinds of writing programs and programs to help you get more organized. There's a program called Pomodoro where things are timed. Do I like writing in time sprints? Sure. If I'm in one of her lounges, I like going to the writer's lounge, which is once a month on a Saturday, where we write for a period of time and she'll tell us how many minutes. And then we come back and we read what we wrote. And I've invited people to come and join and be a part of this. And they say, I just want critique on my writing, or I don't want anyone to hear what I'm writing. Or isn't that a waste of time? Heck no. I wrote 2 books in 2 years in her groups, in those writers' lounges. Cupid is a Bastard was written. This was written because there's poetry, there's flash fiction, there's a short story. This isn't a novel, but there's a long short story in it. And when I first joined the group, a lot of the participants were writing memoirs. And I thought, well, I already wrote a memoir, kind of, because when I was writing my first book, I was with a traditional publisher. And he said to me, I worked with him as a writing coach for 10 years. Before that it took me 13 years. I worked on it for 3 years, then 10 years with him, and then I published it. And it won an award. Go figure. He was the one who said, put it in contests. And I was like, it's my first book. I'll never win that. And then he's like, stop it. So I started entering it in contests. And it won. It won a prize in an international fiction segment of a big contest. And I thought, wow, how did that happen? So then I got less scared about entering my writing in contests. I mentioned that I have a haibu, that if I finish it, I'll put it in. It's actually an essay contest. It's perfect. But I was with all these memoir writers, and I thought, oh man, I already published a book on that. I want to write something different, maybe blog posts or other things. And Rusty said, no worries, just come. And I thought, do I really want to listen to other writers? And my ego, the ego, and I just said that was double ego, my ego.
Hmm.
And I thought, man, do I want to listen to other people? And she said, just try it. I said, okay. And it was so inspiring listening to other people read what they just wrote and we wrote from prompts. Prompts are when you take an idea from something else. And it's created a habit. Like, look what happened the other day. I was listening to an audiobook version of the Bhagavad Gita, and boom, this huge idea just poured out of me with
Hmm.
rhythm, 17 syllables. I used to be a drummer when I was a musician. I was a drummer and a singer. And it all comes together. If you let your creativity dance together, it will pour out of you, everybody. If you need help, come to me. I'll help you find it in your astrological chart and just from talking to you. Because I'm contemplative. I can back up and listen and not get involved. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to guide you to come to that decision place on your own.
How'd you get started with the podcast?
How did I get started with podcasts? I was recording. I had a lot of recordings of guided meditations, and when I was teaching at the School of Wizardry, I taught a course on dreams. Dreaming is something I'm fascinated with, obviously. With the black horse head, I was holding this. I didn't finish that dream with you earlier. I was at the top of these steps, and there was this guy, and this black horse came running, and I caught his chin so I could feel his head on my arms, and I looked him in the eyes, and without speaking verbally or with my voice, I telepathically told him, calm down. And he did. He receded back and laid down on the ground. I haven't figured out what it means yet, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it's this conversation and I'm helping people understand more about meditation. In meditation, we use the idea of horse as the breath. It is often used as a metaphor for breathing. Horses running, and it can be. It's not always. Uh, but I just digressed again or
Yep,
offshot.
that's okay. So when meditating, then do you visualize things or do you try to keep your mind blank? Is that how you start meditating with the
Okay, I think this
consciousness
is
of the breath?
this is such a great question because people think meditating is focusing on something. And something Rusty said to me that I use a lot when I'm speaking or teaching or coaching and teaching about this is she said, until I listen to you, because I would write about meditation, sometimes I would write my blog articles. So I still do. I'm still part of the lounges. One is coming up the last Saturday of this month. And you could join. You could be in it. You could write me a message and say, hey, how do I get in Rusty's thing? Or I just posted something about hers on LinkedIn this morning. What what would be a good idea would be to understand that meditation is not a destination. Rusty said, until I talked to you or heard you write about meditation and heard your words about it, I always thought it was like I had to pack up a suitcase and take a train somewhere and go to a destination, but then I always felt like I was left on the platform. And that's a misconception. It's not a place that we arrive, it's a state of being. And so
Okay.
it's
Where
a
is your being when that's happening then?
witnessing. So
Okay.
when we talked about the salt doll melting and merging, when we talked about closing your eyes and imagining the cup, go back to the idea of imagining the cup. Who was watching? Can you answer?
Like I was visualizing
And who was visualizing? With your eyes closed, how were you doing that?
kinesthetics. Just
Maybe,
knowing
but
where
what
my
if your
body
hand,
is in space.
what if your hand's not even on the cup? What if your cup was in another room and I said, "Remember that cup you were drinking from earlier?" And you said, "Yes."
Hmm.
And you know it's your cup. You drink out of it probably all the time. Do you have a favorite cup? I have two. One for water and the other one for tea. I could tell you
Hmm.
all about them. There's Shakespearean quotes on this one. There's lots of Shakespeare quotes in Cupid is a Bastard. I love Shakespeare. I love what he writes about love. So
So
those are
who's
love
looking at the
quotes.
cup then?
Exactly. Who? And remember, I said Vedanta is about who am I? This is where people get stuck in Vedanta. This is why they like the other paths of yoga, the devotional path of bhakti, or the service of karma yoga, which is the first 6 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, is about karma yoga, selfless service, or honoring the service that we're here to do as human beings. One is to be a human being and to accept where we landed and what we're doing, and to accept what we feel like we're good at and what we're not good at. Accept, adapt, and accommodate. That's what yoga teaches us. So, meditation, remember, yoga is for meditation and finding the witness state. So, we use tools to get there. Maybe it's asana, the physical practices, pranayama, which is how we can quiet the mind and learn to control our relationship to its chattering. Because in the path of yoga that Patanjali wrote, his second poetic phrase is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the cessation or the halting of the mind waves. Vritti. So when we learn how to slow them down and ultimately stop them, and then look, if you think a seasoned meditator like a monk or a Rinpoche or the Dalai Lama or anybody that you might imagine is the ultimate meditator that can sit like a mountain for hours and disappear, where do they disappear to? Do you think they don't have a thought that crosses the mind? Do you, TR?
I think they do.
You think that a thought crosses, right?
Yeah.
You're
You just let it
correct.
enter and it leaves. Yeah.
But how do you let it leave?
My experience with it is at first you use those tools to quiet the mind. So it's trying not to think about anything. And by doing that, you focus on breathing. And then after that for a while, to me, it's like looking out of a window on a car that's driving down the road. So you're just there and these things are entering and leaving, entering and leaving, entering and leaving. And then after that, it's more of you're just in this space, which is seems like space. Like you're just there. And then if a thought appears or a thought comes by, then that's that. And you can look at it or you can let it do what it's going to do. And then I think that's how, for me, when you are trying to figure out what's on your mind, that's one of those things is it's there, it's showing itself to you.
So we have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts, right? During the day, during any given physical day, we only catch maybe 100 of them. There's many going on. Think about dreaming. Who's dreaming? Who's watching the dream? But you got it right. You totally got it right. Because the tools of yoga, like pranayama, which are the breathing exercises, yama means halt, actually. It means to still the breathing because we do holds where we're actually plugging up the nose in alternate nostril breathing techniques. We might do forced breaths. There are many different breathing techniques. These help to refocus, right? Which take us out of the reaction. So the first reaction is for free. Any thought is allowed to be reacted to the first time. What meditation is noticing a thought, reacting, and then pulling back and being the witness again. So all these tools, like repeating a mantra or a prayer or using some kind of beads to count, these all work. These are tools that help us. And in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is having a nervous breakdown on a battlefield because he doesn't want to battle his relatives and his teacher. And it's a metaphor. There's so many metaphors in the Mahabharata because the mind is the battlefield. And we're learning in this gift, this lottery that we won of life, we're learning how to handle it and how to watch it. Enjoyment is part of it, but ultimately we get to the place of witnessing, where it's neither of the pairs of opposites. It's not I like it, I don't like it. It's I accept it. I adapt through that acceptance to me as I am and the world around me. What would this world be like if we taught every little kid this? Trust me, I have a book in the works on this. I don't know when I'll get it done because I let my books take their own path. I don't force them. I'm not that writer that sets the alarm and writes at 6 a.m. Heck no, I'm a night owl. And I write when I feel it, but I learned how to capture it so I don't allow those thoughts to fly by. Does it happen? Sure. If I'm driving, I try to be really careful. And I'll keep telling myself the idea till I can pull over and write it down. So that's really key.
So do you think that ideas then for us here as humans, when you're thinking about either poetry or writing just a novel, but maybe more so in poetry, do you think that those ideas are manifested from within you and your experience, or are you working as like an antenna for something else, or is something else speaking through you? How do you see it? Or could it be a mix of those?
Something that we yogis say is, I am not the doer. I
Yeah.
am not
Well,
the
in the
doer.
Bible, they would say, I'm the instrument, not the hand. Yeah.
So who's the doer?
Yeah. That would be God there. So the universe, the one mind, whatever you want to
Right,
call it.
spirit, God. And then let's go back to the salt doll. When the salt doll melted in the ocean, what happened?
As the Dalai Lama, it became one with everything.
There you go. You got it. You just got Vedanta. Well done, you.
All right. So then, where did the universal mind come from?
It
Is
is.
that beyond our knowing, or
No, we're part of
as
it. We are part of it. We're all part of it. Everything is alive. Everything is interconnected. Cicero's words.
so it's just always been? There is no,
Oh,
sorry about that.
oh no, no problem. We're having
Tornado
weather.
warning.
Yeah.
Tornado warning. We'll see what
We
happens.
we had one the other day too. Um
Oh,
Gosh, you were just there. You were just so there. Um
the universal mind.
the universal mind. We're all part
Where
of
did it
it.
start? Yeah.
Oh, now
So
you're asking
everything,
me, how did this reality begin?
like, is it just, well, this reality would probably be easier to explain than what created this reality. So I think that's one of the bigger questions is what created the creator?
I don't have
Is
an
that just
answer.
something that's just something outside of our ability to understand right now?
Rather than trying to imagine chicken and egg, I believe, and I'm using the word believe, I believe that our best choice would be acceptance and just accept the fact that it is. Because if we're trying to go back to the beginning point, look, we have the telescope out there, right? Making discoveries of light that is traveling from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, right? Light years.
Right.
And that I saw a video, I didn't watch the entire video, but I saw something about Polaris. Interesting, you brought up the North Star. About Polaris may have already exploded, but we don't even know yet. Did you see that about James Webb
I
Telescope?
haven't.
Yeah, you might want to look it up. If you find stuff, please write me a message and send me the links, everybody.
So as constant as the Northern Star is not so constant.
Wouldn't that be wild if we figured it out? And then also Titan, the moon Titan. There's
Around
discrepancies,
Saturn.
yes, one of Saturn's moons, about that it has rivers, it has mountains. It's in the Goldilocks zone.
It's in that ice. Isn't it thought to have been an ice planet?
No, Pluto's an ice planet. Chiron is an ice planetoid.
Yeah, but Titan. I thought that was just.
I think, but what we're discovering is that it has mountains. It's, we don't know. How do we know? Unless you set foot there, how do you know? We don't know what's on the other side of the moon, or do we?
Well, if this is a simulation or something like it,
Why aren't we seeing the
then
other side of the moon? Why? Why does it always keep its? Why? Until I'm up there, I don't know. Do I believe these? Look, I went to in Florida where they were building the parts of the International Space Station. And you could walk around the exhibit while they're actually working on it, on stuff that was going to get launched. And I didn't get to see a launch, but a launch was being prepared for 3 days hence. So there was a lot going on that day. I could go out to that closest observation place with the telescope, and I could look at the shuttle and all this stuff. And it was fascinating. Watching them work and get, like, they were putting all the food stuff into the compartments in this part that they were going to launch on the shuttle. They were finishing it up when I was there. It was so freaking cool. And it's like, well, are we, there's all these theories about, we see people in space. I watched a video of somebody put honey on bread in space or in weightlessness. We don't know. Do we know if we went to the moon or not? Was that in a studio or not? How do I know unless the ego, wants to touch it, wants to feel it. And that springs forth the birth of gazillions of theories, right? Who are we to say what's conspiracy or not? How do we know? But if you find stuff out, tell me. I'm into it. I want to learn. I watched AJ's show from last week on the Y-Files, and it was about mountains and remote viewers. And, given my propensity or gift for being able to do that stuff, I would really like to do more. Do I want to work for the CIA? Not necessarily. I want peace. I want healing. I was raised by pacifists. My father's motto was shoot pictures, not guns. I was sent to a Quaker school and taught to meditate as a little kid. I don't want to spy on people. I want people to love each other and accept each other and accept this place. And the show that he did was about these things going on inside of big mountains in different areas of the world, with aliens and humans working side by side. I lived in the desert in Arizona. I saw UFOs. I wasn't hallucinating. It was after band practice. I was probably as awake and aware as I could be. Seeing stuff. I saw the 7 lights over Phoenix. I happened to be having a little party in my apartment that night. And we were facing the right direction, but back then we didn't have flip phones we we had flip phones, but not phones that could take photos. And I didn't want to go get, I had a digital camera. Oh my God. It used floppy disks, but I
Yeah,
didn't get
a
any
one
pictures
megapixel.
of it. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been worth it. I wouldn't have been able to get a decent photo. And, I mean, I've seen this stuff, but, and I've seen this stuff. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, Monroe Institute, come on, bring me on. I don't need to take your beginner class. I want to be on staff.
So then, going back to the theater and the screen, which is life? The theater, the screen, or both?
Both. In meditation, we watch the dark screen. It's on the inside of the physical forehead. So when you close your eyes, the cave of meditation is the third eye, Ajna chakra. But where is that? Slice the brain in half and find that eye of Horus. You've probably, do you know what I'm talking about?
Hmm. I
Or
do.
did I take a leap? So people,
No.
if a brain is dissected, there is the eye of Horus where the pituitary and pineal gland are. How did that come to be? How did the Egyptians do that? Well, they were pretty good at, preparing bodies. But they respected bodies. Did they actually dissect a body? When I was studying traditional Chinese medicine, becoming an acupuncturist, yep, that's one of the things I did. I'm not practicing, and I learned with a Japanese teacher, a teacher who taught me in Japanese. We were speaking English, but I had to learn all the poetry in Japanese. And in early traditional, I'm going to say Oriental medicine, there was no dissection. Go look up the early drawings of organs. They look like flowers.
Hmm.
I actually have an article about this on where that appears on my blog, everybody. You can go, it's about the power of sound and the power of your voice, because I'm talking about chakras, what you say chakra, chakras and sound. Because sound, when we speak and it goes out our mouths, it comes back in our ears. So what we say about ourselves, thoughts are powerful, don't get me wrong. And we see them, but that's why mantra works, why chanting and praying and repetition works. So be careful what you're listening to in music. What do I listen to? A lot of classical music and a lot of traditional chanting. When I lived at the ashram studying for a bit, we would get up in the morning really super early. And I'm not a morning person, everybody. That was challenging for me, getting on that schedule with them, being so regimented. It's like boot camp. When you fly into the Bahamas airport and they say in customs, where are you going? You say, I'm going out to Paradise Island to Shivananda Ashram. They go, oh, boot camp, man. It's boot camp. It really is regimented, especially when you're taking a course. And you work, you do karma yoga. So you're up every morning, you're meditating first, and you might be fidgety or sore or tired from the day before, and you're sitting knee to knee with everybody on a
Hmm.
thin little cushion, unless you take your own. And then you chant a particular series of chants that lasts for a decent amount of time. And you can participate in this online. They do this live now, virtually. You can find it on Facebook, YouTube, all over the place. And then somebody speaks. So this is how you start your day. You wash yourself, you get yourself ready, you get in your proper clothes, you go to the meditation space, temple, whatever you want to call it. You sit still for a period of time with a leader who says very little bit or maybe nothing. And then you chant with everybody, and then somebody teaches you something. Then you go do yoga, a rigorous yoga workout that has pranayama and some meditation and some very particular postures done in a very particular order, and you do the king, the queen, the prince, and the princess. The king is the headstand, the proper headstand, like this, not like this. And if you can't do it, you try. And then you do the shoulder stand. And then you do the forward bend, sitting and standing. That's the king, the queen, the prince, and the princess. And then you do other postures. They do teach the path of Raja Yoga. That's why they use royalty. Raja means king in many of the languages that come from Sanskrit, like Hindi. And then you might do a job, karma yoga. And then you might learn something. And when you're taking a course like a yoga teacher training, you only get an hour and a half off the day. And you're either doing homework because it's due at night when you go back to the temple to do what you did in the morning all over again. Sit for a period of at least 20 minutes. Chant the same chants from the morning and then learn again. And there's often guest speakers or people from monks from the ashram or swamis from the ashram that lead that. And I remember when I was there, I had taken yoga teacher training in several other schools prior. I was already certified. I started teaching my very first time when I was 17. I got into a course because I begged them to let me in because you had to be 18. But I said, but look, I'll be 18 in a few weeks. Let me in. My birthday's the end of October. I got in September. I talked them into letting me in because by the time it would be done, I'd be 18. And it was kind of against what they did, but it was the 70s, so I got in. And I started teaching. And then I took another course, and then I took another course. And then I later was taking a guided meditation course called Yoga Nidra. Nidra is the Sanskrit word for sleep. Nidra, Yoga Nidra is yoga sleep. It is guided meditation when you're lying down on your back or sitting up and listening to something. Or actually, the traditional way is to do it yourself. But that's what all these guided meditations are. By the time I took that course, I was already certified and had been in a guild of hypnotherapists. So I had an arsenal of some stuff already. And then I was at the place to take the Yoga Nidra teacher training. And I had to show them college transcripts. I'm like, why? You know? But I got my college transcripts sent to them from University of the Arts, and they looked at it, and the person in the office, God bless her, Goddess bless her, Divine bless her, she said, you know, you could get a master's degree in yoga. And I said, what? I didn't even know you could do that in the U.S. And she said, yeah, we're affiliated with the Hindu university. You would hardly have to take any classes given this transcript. And, you know, I showed them all my yoga experience, etc., because I hadn't taken a course from them before. And they wanted to know, who is this person showing up that's been teaching yoga since 1978? And then it turned out that the head of that place was someone I knew. We went to the same art school. I had met this guy on occasions. I had a band with people that were his devotees. I mean, we had all these crosses of meeting each other. And I said, okay. So I called up Hindu University and I said, look, I was at the Amrit Institute and they said I could get a master's degree in yoga. Can you tell me about this? And then a year and a half later, I had a master's degree, pretty dang fast. But I had to go take the teacher training at Amrit for it. And I thought, man, this is not, it was very physically oriented and it wasn't as traditional. And I had already taken Shivananda teacher training. They wouldn't accept it for some reason, which I thought was much more traditional. So I went back to Shivananda and I took Jyotish, Vedic astrology, and I took more courses. And when I was there for yoga teacher training, I remember, because that's a month-long residency, I remember after a couple weeks, and I had already taken courses there before, but this was immersive, really immersive. I remember waking up one morning and walking to satsang and hearing the chanting. And I thought, am I late? And I looked around and there's other people. We're all walking at the same time. And I realized that when I chanted enough and participated in that, it ended up ringing in my vibrational field, in my molecules, in my quarks, in my particles. And I could hear it in the silence. And that's when I realized, hey, this chanting stuff works. It does quiet the mind. So I've been if I had to say an addiction, I've become kind of addicted to listening to certain chant tracks. For years, I listened to this oming on YouTube, and I had a CD of it back when we had those. And there are certain chants I really like to listen to, mostly Ganesha. And here's a secret I'm going to give you all. If you want to get the power from mantras, you have to chant something to Ganesha first. And my professor says it this way. There's a door you want to go through, and that chant allegedly opens that door. It's like a key that can get there. And you go up and you're standing there and you've got your key ring and you're going through it looking for the key. Maybe you find the key, but you're not going to get it into the lock. So there's no hope of opening the door unless you chant to Ganesha first. And there's all kinds of reasons why. That would be a whole nother day of conversations. But a little something, something for you yogis out there.
What's you talked about it before, but what's the best way for people to follow you? Just through your website and
yes,
then you
absolutely.
can find all your social media on there.
On my website, you can join my mailing list, which I don't send out very often because I personally feel mailing lists are kind of overused. So I don't hit you every month even. Sometimes it's quarterly. It's when I feel like I have something important to share with you. I would prefer that you subscribe to my blog for free or my podcast. You can find those on my website and my link tree and my name. It's important to be able to spell it, which is Ambika Devi, AmbikaDevi. That's ambikadevi.com. You can write me a message there. There's a contact form. You can send me a message. And then please connect with me on social media. Follow me. Give me some hearts. Write comments. Tell me if you like it or don't like it. I want to hear from you and connect with you. And if you've got something you want me to look at or you want me to share to my story, I do post things and videos, and I've got an upcoming workshop that you can join for you writers out there. How many of us need to write copy for something? Maybe it's an ad or a post on social media, or maybe you're working on your elevator speech about what you want to tell somebody when they say, "Hi, tell me your name. What do you do?" Well, I am teaching a haiku workshop, and haiku has become my conscious trigger for essays, books, articles, you name it, blog posts, and even social media posts, and fixing and tweaking things when somebody says to me, "What do you talk about?" And it kind of comes out of me in a haiku, and then I can expand it. Haiku's only 17 syllables. And with these shorter bursts of information, I posted something yesterday about we are a culture that has diminished to an attention span of 3 to 10 seconds. So haiku's perfect in my opinion. So come join me on January 23rd at 7:30 p.m. It's free. I will ask for a donation after you're in the class, not asking you to pay in advance. So when I teach things, that's how I've been doing it recently. I'm also available to talk to your groups, organizations, and of course for coaching. Astrology can be a part of it, or it doesn't have to be a part of it. I've got plenty to help you with.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today and your conversation and stories. Appreciate it.
It's been my absolute pleasure, TR. Thank you, everybody, for listening all the way to the end. And I really look forward to hearing from you.
All right. I'll talk to you on the other side of this. Okay. Thanks.